our friend Evan Siegfried from GOP GPS, the author of, with more on this. Also with us, Democratic strategist and Bustle.com Senior Director of Research, Jessica Tarlov, as well as Dan Mitchell from the Cato Institute. All right, we've heard it before. I'll just say, Steve Mnuchin told Neil Cavuto he thought it was going to happen, signed and delivered by August. We know that that's not actually in the cards, Evan. Now they're saying the end of this year. Trump's coming out with a program next week. What is the likelihood that this really happens?
Well, I think it's something, the likelihood is quite high. We have both chambers of Congress and a president who will sign a very good bill. What we need to do is ensure that this tax reform package actually achieves meaningful reform and can help all Americans and businesses with tax relief, as well as simplifying the tax code and promoting business growth. One interesting aspect that President Trump talked about on the campaign trail, which I stand behind fully, is that he talked about how many people who are entrepreneurs are being charged the individual tax rate. And he wanted to bring that tax rate down to 16%. And that benefits millennials entirely because they are the most entrepreneurial generation and they're struggling under taxes and regulations.
All right, Dan, let me just ask you, what do you think it's going to look like? Not whether or not it's going to get done, but what is this initial proposal from him, do you think, going to look like?
The thing we don't really know yet is what they're going to do to cut taxes for individuals. Trump has had, from the very beginning, a very good plan to reduce the corporate tax rate to 15%, and, as was just said, to also lower taxes for businesses that pay through the individual income tax. But cutting taxes for individuals, that gets very expensive, at least in the sense that Washington thinks all our income belongs to them. And that's the part.
Yes, they do think that, don't they?
I'm anxious to see what they're going to come up with.
Jessica, this is where it gets tough politically, right? Because as Dan points out, sometimes it's tough when you're out there on the political stump to say, okay, well, we're going to give a bigger tax break to the 1% or to the top 15%, although I always argue these are the people that are paying the majority of taxes anyway. But, this politically becomes more of a hurdle. How does he get around that to get individual tax reform through?
I'm not completely sure. I mean, fundamentally, I guess he's going to have to art of the deal this and work with whoever is going to be able to work with him. You're going to have debt hawks on the right who I'm sure are not going to be particularly interested in the plan, especially if he tries to also do a big infrastructure plan, which the Democrats would like better. So I think that he's going to have to.
Right? You're spending lots of money.
We love to spend responsibly and for the good of the American public. But yes, Democrats are far less afraid of spending, though Republicans have spent a tremendous amount. It's very few out there like Rand Paul who are really screaming about what's going on with the debt. But they're going to stand in his way if he's going to do a $1 trillion infrastructure plan, for instance. So I think it's going to be a lot of smaller deals. And he's definitely going to have to think about what happened with this health care plan and how embarrassing that was for him. And Paul Ryan and the whole caucus.
Over their skis on that one. They have gone back to the drawing board, and we're getting word that they may have worked out a deal on that front. So that's critical because that's a $1 trillion tax savings that we could see in that. They've talked a lot about the border tax. Evan, what do you think of that one? I mean, the whole idea is they would be able to make up some revenue by saying to any company, if you're going to import anything from overseas, we're going to hit you with a border tax. It's going to hopefully make a more equitable playing ground. This is the argument anyway, for domestic manufacturing. And we're going to make up some revenue. The flip side is, I can tell you there's a lot of retailers that are already struggling right now, and they're going to get hit by this.
Yeah, in that, I side with the retailers, and that's why I do not believe that the border tax is a good idea. What we could do is find an alternative, such as repatriation of foreign money into the United States.
Yes.
We can cut a deal with all these Americans and American companies that have been parking the U.S. dollar overseas so that they don't have to pay any sort of income tax. And that could bring in upwards of $200 billion and put that into programs that we need to have funded.
Listen, I like the sound of that. And you know what? That's something that everyone can get their head around. Everyone, Democrats and Republicans. It makes absolutely no sense to let all this money sit overseas and basically work for all these other countries instead of for us. Another big story. Hang on, we just got a lot to cover, Jessica. I want to get to this one with you as well. We're here just potentially a week away from another possible government shutdown. Here we go again, right? Now, Congress is back to work on Monday, so they got a few days here to come up with some kind of bill to fund our government. At issue, we have funding for Obamacare and the border wall. So will the two sides be able to reach a deal, an agreement? They've got until midnight next Friday. Dan, what's the likelihood of a shutdown?
They'll strike a deal at some point. I personally don't really worry about government shutdowns. I get more upset when it reopens. But more seriously, when they have these so-called shutdowns, less than 20% of the government actually is shut down. And that 20% in many cases are things like the Department of Education or the Department of Housing and Urban Development that we shouldn't be funding anyhow.
All right. Yeah, that's it. I'll tell you, Jessica, you know, when you have a government shutdown, it's like people just shake their heads and they say, yet again, Washington just can't figure it out. They can't get out of their own way. And now we got our government shutting down as a result of it. What is the political capital cost?
Oh, I think it's a tremendous cost. We had this shutdown in 2013, which I think hurt Republicans in terms of their reputation. Obviously, they won the 2016 election and performed well in the 2014 midterms, but their reputation was hurt by it. And when you look at polls, they're always seen as the more obstructionist party, and I think it has to do a lot with that. I do not want Democrats to play any role in shutting down the government. You may think that 20% of the government shutting down is a good thing, and we don't need to be funding the Department of Education or HUD, but we absolutely do. I don't want one American not going to work collecting a paycheck because of something the Democrats did. Now, that means that the Republicans are going to have to deal with us, and they should not be including the border wall in this deal. I mean, that's completely ridiculous. It's something that not even a majority of Republicans there are endorsing. So take that off the table.
Okay, you agreed, Evan?
Well, I agree with Jess in that we should not have a government shutdown, and Republicans will absolutely get blamed for it. The public voted in 2016 to end the business as usual attitude. And President Trump is not for a shutdown, nor are Republicans. We have the Freedom Caucus who are going to say, you know what, we have no problem with it being shut down, but which Democrats are counting on as some way that they can negotiate some sweetheart pork barrel spending deals for their votes. Yes. At the end of the day, what we really need to focus on is getting some sort of funding for the government. And what will probably end up happening is a continuing resolution until September, where we're going to take it up over the summer.
We'll do it again.
Can down the road again, right? Just
Why
that's
not?
what we do. That's become a mode of operation.